20 people. Quite a few people joining today. Really exciting. Wow, more people than I've expected. Allow recording. See some familiar faces, see some new faces joining, which is also very, very nice to see. People joining from different parts of the world, of course. I see someone joining us from France right now. So it's also very nice to see that there's so many people joining today, and it's summer. So I expected for everyone to be on a holiday and for all of us to have a conversation of three today, but it's good to see that the topic speaks to so many people. Um, I'll wait for another minute before I kick off. But yeah, it's great. Oh my God, we actually might reach above 40 today. So hello from Amsterdam. Hi, everyone. All right, so maybe I'll kick off a little bit. So, hi everyone. As mentioned already, happy to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces joining the call. And while the group is, I wouldn't say nice and cozy, but we are above 40, um, I would like to welcome you to Lapaya webinar on the topic Build for the Future, How to Redesign Jobs and Organizations for the Age of AI. I am Milda Bayer, VP of Marketing and Go-to-Market at Lapaya, and I will be your host today. To briefly share what Lapaya does, Lapaya is a learning impact company delivering trainings through our blended training platform. We focus on accelerating your business strategy through closing of your employee skill gaps while making sure that you can measure your training impact and ROI. We work with companies, as you can see, with many, but primarily with financial industries, consulting, logistics companies, and more. So Rabobank, Maersk, Vopak, BCG, Just Eat Takeaway, and many, many more to make sure that the right people have the right skills at the right time and place. And before we start, I want to mention that our webinars are always very interactive, which means that I encourage you all to ask your questions, share your experience, and interact with each other in chat. I know that my team is online, and I know that the speakers here today are also super excited to connect with you over chat and are ready to answer your questions or your remarks going forward. So maybe to warm up before we start, for those who joined, I would like for you all to share your name, where are you joining from, or which company you're working at, and maybe one opportunity that you believe that AI brings to the future of work. So we would like to hear from you in chat. And while you're answering, I would like to introduce our panelists today. So I would like to start by introducing Missy Strong. She is a senior lead for people's experience at Pigment. And Missy, maybe you could tell a little bit more about yourself and share why today's topic is so important to you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to talk about AI, which is, the big topic of the moment, and I think it will be for quite some time. I've spent, as Milda said, I'm a senior lead of people experience at Pigment, and I've actually spent the last 14 years working in Paris, but I'm originally from the United States. So it means I've learned a lot about navigating some pretty fun multicultural workplaces. And right now I'm at Pigment, which is a very fast growing French scale up SaaS company. And I'm leading everything from learning and development to engagement insights, workplace experience, employer branding, and just the way that we design programs that scale with the business. And my focus has really always been on employee experiences that are very practical, very strategic, and very human centered, especially in environments where resources are very stretched and people are very stretched thin. And I think that's also why I'm super interested in AI because it's really reshaping work and not just as this shiny object, but really as a tool that can help organizations cut through a lot of bureaucracy. We can scale skills and we can actually free up people to do the work that actually matters. And yeah, I think that's a bit about me.
Thank you so much for sharing this. Same for you, Tony. Can you give a short intro to yourself and why this topic is so important to you?
Yes, happy to, and happy to be here today and to see so many people from so many different locations joining. So yes, I'm Tony Cairns. I have a dual role. On the one hand, I'm the founder of a consultancy business called Yellow Box, and there I help organizations navigate the people side of change. So M&A, reorganizations, new market entry, anything where there's a significant transformation. And secondly, I'm a fractional chief people officer. So at the moment, I'm chief people officer for two tech companies, one in the Netherlands called 12, and one which is a global distributed company, which is a digital marketing agency called Electica. And for me, the reason AI is so fundamental, I mean, I agree with everything Missy said. So I would sort of double click on what she said there. Plus, I think for me, as I said, my core business is helping organizations navigate the people side of change. And I think what we're going through at the moment with AI is perhaps one of the most industry agnostic, geographically agnostic, sector agnostic changes and transformations that I think probably we've ever seen. And for me, helping organizations really do that in a human centered way, making sure that we take people with us on this new horizon, this new frontier, rather than leaving them behind, I think is going to be crucial to the success of AI adoption and collaboration in the future. So really excited for the whole topic in general.
Thanks, Tony. And I think, yeah, I think the topic is so exciting because it's in a way speculative. It's predicting the future because no one has a glass ball and no one can predict the future. So I'm really happy that we're talking about it. And before we jump into our presentation, I will give a quick agenda for you all so you're aware of what we're going to chat about. So today we'll explore a few topics, which is really redesigning organizations for the AI era. Then we'll talk a little bit more about empowering the human AI hybrid teams and how would that work in collaboration. And of course, we'll try to identify the jobs most affected by AI, positively or negatively. Anything can be an answer, as we all know, to really focus on that topic. But before we start with the first question, I'm going to sort of launch a poll on a question. Which organizational changes do you think will be most critical for thriving in an AI-driven future? So take a few moments to answer your question, maybe even to kick off and to warm up. I think it's a great way to reflect before you hear our panelists' answers, of course. So what we're already seeing that prioritizing continuous learning for employees, how employees can adapt to AI-driven roles, but I also see a lot of people choosing that the organizational change will happen most with will be embedding data literacy and AI adoption across the organization. So wow, really big split of questions. And I see a lot of people voting. We're more than 55% in, 60% in. So also, I think it helps our content team with writing future-centric content. And if you have more observations about this poll, feel free to reflect on it in chat. And maybe then I'm going to move on into the first question, where I would like to start with asking Missy. How should companies reshape their structures to stay competitive and human-centered in the AI era?
Great question. Happy to kick this one off. This is actually a hot take for me, but it's super interesting because at Pigment, we're also in the middle of designing our organizational structure and going through some of these questions that we're all asking ourselves today. I feel as if org structure is a little bit of scaffolding. And to me, what matters most is how people actually move through it. And I really feel like that's always been the case. If we want AI to really accelerate us and not just automate us, we need models that can support adaptability, speed, and trust at scale. It's really changing the pace of the pace of business that we have right now, and not human connection. Actually, we need more human connection. So for me, it's not really like, is it flat or is it hierarchical? It's really like, can you make a decision in time to matter? Um, Companies thriving in AI right now, they aren't necessarily flattest, although a lot of trends are showing us right now that companies are leaning towards this. But for me, it's going to be the ones that operate really fast. They have clear decision rights. They are able to have fast operating cadences, and they can meet flexibility around teams and opportunities. And just as an example too, at Pigment, we have gold standards around our meetings. We don't want people sitting in meetings all day and wasting their time. We ask questions like, how many people actually need to be here? Everyone in this meeting, is in charge of the cost of the use of that time. Like, can we use AI to help us automate some of these decision-making processes or meeting notes? We need everything to be super efficient, very, very simple, and very, very focused. And yeah, I think if you zoom in on the workforce aspect, obviously an emerging trend, that, especially if you keep reading about it right now, is the ratio to managers to individual contributors. So there's this kind of manager index topic happening. There's not really a right number, I don't think. I've worked in organizations where it was like 8-to-1 or if it was 5-to-1. But I think the idea is that a lot of companies want to remove the middle layer of management and just like have a team that's more flexible, that are able to self-manage and self-drive themselves. You see this with Amazon CEO. He made it really explicit recently by mandating that 15% increase in the IC to manager ratio. He wants to flatten the organization. He thinks that this cuts bureaucracy, it moves decision making, and makes you move closer to the customer. And this is where super AI superpowers and automation can come in and really eat that admin work. And it will change the role of managers as well. And their value is going to shift from being not just process overseers, but coaches, especially with skill sets. So for me, it's clear that we need to focus on being human centered and we need to focus on those skills, but I don't think it's going to be easy to rip out a lot of these organizations how we've traditionally run them. And we still don't know a lot about AI, so we have a lot to explore there.
Yeah, 100%. And also well noticed, as I mentioned to you beforehand, I have a pretty big network in HR and talent acquisition. And the interesting thing, it is a trend that middle layer somehow is being eliminated. Same happened at Vinted, which is one of the biggest secondhand clothing marketplace, where they have also eliminated middle managers, which is interesting trend to see and interestingly spotted. Tony, what are your thoughts on this question? Anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think I mean, to me, I've been in the HR world now for almost 25 years, and I think actually that trend towards flattening, the trend towards reducing middle manager layers, as to me, that's actually been an ongoing trend. I think what AI is doing is accelerating it, but I don't see it. For me, that's been it's an ongoing trend towards flatter organizations where you can make change management faster, communication is slicker, there's less time going on people management activities. Where perhaps I see more of a shift, apart from the speed of that, in the making of a more human-centered org design, is how we do these kind of combinations of role and tool. And I think that's what's interesting for me, is how we reflect that in the traditional org charts, because as Missy said, and I think she's completely right, the org design is a scaffold, but normally what you would traditionally have in an org chart is a group of tasks grouped into one role. The role's got a job title, and the job title has a reporting line and a cost, and it sits on an org chart. Where I think the design is kind of going is into this emerging world where, do you call an AI agent a role? If it's a customer service agent, let's say, does it have a role? Does it have somebody in charge of managing its outputs, its KPIs? Or do you have that classed as a tool and a platform, and there is somebody's job to manage the platform? So for me, this is what's going through my mind, is how do we reflect the tasks that are being done by AI? Are they classed as AI roles or are they AI tools? Because I think that actually has an impact on how you design an organization structure of the future. So I don't have the answer, but that's one of the questions coming in for me. Similarly with the idea of AI coaches. So something that I'm looking at is, why doesn't every employee have its own AI development coach that is checking in with it on progress against goals, asking, giving emotional support, even where you've got the more psychologically trained tools now. And again, are they roles? Does every employee have a shadow role in the organization? Or not, So these are some of the things that I would put out there, which is not about efficiency per se, but it's just about when is a role versus when is it a tool?
It's a really good question. Now I'm even reflecting on myself. I have to say, do I consider AI agents roles or tools? Because today I think it gets so skewed when, let's say, our leadership team says, can't we substitute something with an AI agent? You're looking at FTE, like full-time employee, versus an AI agent and cost. But in the end, AI agents, in the end, these are tools. These are not human. This is not human intellect, and it's not additional capacity or hands on deck that would help for you to change something within an organization. It's still you that simply needs to expand yourself and your scope. So actually, this was a huge learning for me. Thank you for sharing, Tony. I wasn't expecting that in the first question it will sort of explode on like a personal reflection. So thank you for that. And then before we jump to the next topic, we're going to launch another poll on a question a little bit about your organizations, and we'll share the results directly afterwards. So how is AI most often integrated into human workflows within your company? So take some time to reflect here. I think Elisa, who's our event marketing manager, she's going to keep this poll for a few minutes, and we're going to move into the next question, which is how are human AI teams redefining roles and responsibilities in the workplace? And it's a maybe great topic for you to pick up, Tony, because you left on such a rhetorical note. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, indeed. So, I mean, my sense is that AI is going to be best thought of as a sort of amplifier of human skills. Again, I know I put it out there as a question, can there be roles? And by the way, there's some really good thoughts in the chat here about holding AI accountable, making sure, or can they take accountability? And at which point maybe that's when it's a role. So I just want to say really good chat here. But on the other side, if we think about it as an amplifier of skills, I think there are a few different ways in which we can think about AI supporting us. So there's one which is, I think, the more classic AI at the moment, which is about holding on to repetitive tasks and skills. So that is something I think somebody in the chat said that they're looking, for example, to outsource HR specialist work to an AI agent for first layer questions, employee questions about policy. So for me, that's an example of how an assistant can handle kind of repetitive tasks. But then I think we've got AI as a collaborator. So really a creative partner generating ideas and really outbound options. And then we've got one which is about AI making decisions within a set of kind of rules that we govern. And for me, one of the things that is really not concerning, it's really something to keep an eye on, is how when we work with them as a thought partner, so generating kind of content, that we get into a really mindful collaboration between these two, between the roles and the responsibilities of the AI and those of the humans. Sorry, I just realized if I jumped on a little bit too fast, Milda.
No, not at all.
Ah,
I also wanted to, not at all. And now what I also wanted to do is to share the results with the
yeah,
yourself and the
sorry.
team, so you could simply also reflect on that. I'm wondering whether that impacts your observation. So what's very
Ah,
interesting that in the organizations, the AI most integrated into human workflows when it comes to AI as collaborators. So a lot of people see that AI is their collaborator. Then the second most voted was AI as an assistant. So treating
mhm.
AI almost as, so I would say, a human being as an assistant that's helping you to automate repetitive tasks, exactly supporting your thinking here, Tony. And then we had a very few people using AI as an agent, making decisions within set rules. So acting slightly autonomously, and integration of roles bridging technology and context. So it's great to see that so many actually also see the future in a similar way as you do. Is this surprising for you? Did you expect this answer, Tony?
Actually, no, expected people to be more leaning on the first one about the AI as an assistant, which is the repetitive task automation. So I think it's really cool to see, yeah, almost 60% of people really recognizing the role of AI as a collaborator and a partner, because that's also where I think people will be more reassured as well. You know, I think when you get into AI as an assistant, a lot of the time that's when you lean into kind of fear, I will be replaced by AI. But when you really think of AI as a collaborator, I think it's way more exciting for people to think, yeah, I've actually got a thought creative partner. I think this is one of the reasons ChatGPT has exploded the way it did, is because it was like, wow, I've got somebody who can really think with me and come up with content. But this is where I would come back to the importance of us really um, treating as a collab, a collaboration, and in the way we design organizations and the way we design roles, that we really build that into the design. And if you're interested, I have a small example where a client of mine, or a new client of mine, really got this wrong. Maybe it's helpful as an example. Shall I share that, Milda? Small example?
Of course.
Yeah.
And then, yes,
Yeah, I don't want to overtake from Missy as well, because I know also she's got a lot of really great insights on this. But for me, what was really interesting in this particular client is they brought in an AI partner to build marketing content. So the idea was that this tool would build blog posts, articles, and basically it would more or less scrape all the industry leading trends in their tech space and just publish lots of marketing content. So really building them as a thought leader, with the idea that that would create lots of new inbound leads. So it's a lead generation concept. Sounds great. So they brought in this tool and sort of said to the sales and marketing team, okay, this is going to do that for you. So you need to focus more on what to do with the leads when they come in. So that was your job. And they just sort of left and ignored the content creation side. And within 3 months, it was such a disaster, the CEO pulled it. The content was technically inaccurate. It was going out, actually undermining credibility with clients. It was not doing the job. In fact, some of it was pure hallucination. So some of it was actually even made up. And the sales and marketing team sort of shrugged their shoulders and said, yeah, told you so, told you that wouldn't work. And the real issue there, I think, was not about the tool, and I won't name the tool maybe because I really don't think it was the tool's fault. But what nobody did was say, how should this marketing team be held accountable for using this tool? How should they be rewarded and incentivized? You know, how should they be thinking that this tool is my collaborator and this is going to build content that I am also proud of, that I am checking in with, that I'm also making sure it really works for this business? And instead, what they did is said, this is just going to sit alongside. It's not really your job to worry about it. And I think that was the fundamental mistake. It should have been something that was really seen as an enabler, not a replacement. So I thought that was really a worthwhile and very relevant recent example of how this thinking about the org design not being done really led to what was a shame, a business disaster. They removed the tool and replaced it with a new FTE at a cost that I just don't think is going to give them anywhere near the same ROI that they could have got had they really built this properly.
yeah. It's very interesting because leadership very often sort of rolls back into saying, but can't this be done with AI? I have these conversations. I think many, many people on this call have the same conversations and get the same remark, but can't this be done by AI? So I'm very curious, Missy, from your perspective on your question and what Tony just shared, any reflections that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I'm gonna back up Tony on everything that she said because I agree with her wholeheartedly. And it's funny you mentioned too that content example because my husband's a CMO and he says the same thing about content generation. So we're aligned on that one. But yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think we often get into this kind of narrative often where it's like humans versus AI all the time. And for me, as a people experience designer, it's all about AI and the workflow. And I think we'll get into this a bit later, but the first comes from psychological safety that you have around using it and not just understanding like what you're using it for, but like why is leadership wanting to use it? And we'll talk about that in a bit. And then also on a separate topic, it's really about starting for me with processes and then jobs. And then you break those jobs down into tasks, and then you can really focus on the skills that people have, the human skills to kind of bridge the human and the tech context. And actually, you see a lot, I've been seeing a lot on LinkedIn recently, which is really interesting. A lot of companies are starting to combine IT and people teams together because they want to kind of bridge that gap of automation and moving fast and being really efficient, but with a human centered approach at heart. And I've seen at least 2 or 3 companies or use cases on LinkedIn have mentioned that recently, which I think is really interesting because I actually work a lot with the IT team at Pigment. And yeah, so you just want to automate those repeatable kind of tasks that you're doing. I talk to ChatGPT all day long, like all day long. I think it's like my best friend at work. And we just have to amplify, what requires the human judgment. And that's how we're really going to design for interaction and not replacement. And then the other side too is the AI literacy component, which is really tough to do because AI is moving so fast and it's changing at a rapid pace. I mean, ChatGPT 5 was just released, and now we're all kind of scrambling to learn more about ChatGPT. So it's hard to, have the literacy with the domain expertise when things are moving really quickly. And that's why I'm a big advocate for T-shaped skills, which I'll talk about later. And I think we have that in the next question, but really kind of developing more breadth in your experience, knowledge, and skills, but keeping that depth in your one focus area. And yeah, so if you look at a lot of the internal processes that people have, the complexity can really come from 2 things, like how many tasks there are in a job, and then how tough is each one to execute. And you can think of this like a Richter scale for work, like a level 5 task isn't just going to be a bit harder than 4, it's going to be 10 times harder. And for me, AI can help that in 2 ways. It can reduce those number of tasks, it could take on the easier ones, or it can lower the complexity of the ones that you have, those like level 5 tasks. And for me, that's why, AI is so effective with that admin, that heavy stuff that we all dread. I know I do it all the time, like analyzing data or making forms and sheets and reviewing things. So I think that compared with what we were talking about before with the flatter organization structures, that's when we're really cutting out a lot of the bureaucracy.
Mm.
And yeah, so I mean, and you can take this example too in the people team, there's a lot of things that we're working on right now, like updating a lot of our, policies and things like that. And parental leave policy is one that we're working on now. And traditionally, that's going to mean a whole lot of work for not just people ops. They have to gather all of the labor laws, they have to compare it, do benchmarking, draft versions, run those reviews with, our head of people, with legal, with our founders. And then, after that process is done, then turn that into a full blown program. And I think with AI, you can have the heavy lift of the agent pulling in all of those updates for you, benchmarking for you, and drafting, the options with the trade-offs. And then the human step is really coming in deciding, okay, which option is fair for us, in our company, how is it culturally aligned, and really, making the final call and debating on that. Of course, fact checking you have to with AI because as you said, it hallucinates, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree
I
with you. I
think
think, and Tony, yes, feel free to add.
that, yeah, no, sorry, it was just something Missy said that struck me that I think is maybe particularly relevant for this organization, sorry, this audience, which is this point on, is there going to be an emerging trend towards integrating people and tech teams, or at least IT? Sorry, I shouldn't say tech, but IT. And what would that mean? I think that's a super important watch out for all of us as people leaders, as I expect most of the people on the call are. Because if we go down that direction, I think there's also going to be a lot of anxiety in the organization. Once you see the role of a chief people officer potentially merge with something of IT. I think weirdly, the people team absorbing IT would be regarded with a lot less suspicion than the IT team absorbing the people team. So I think that's one that's just a really, really good attention point that we don't go blindly into that without recognizing the potential impact on the culture of an organization. And coming back to that core question about how do we keep it human centered, I think that will be a really important signal for any business that takes that leap without giving it due thought and consideration.
Yeah. And maybe to add here, that's why I think the relationship between Chief People's Officer and CTO, for example, Chief Technology Officer, is getting more and more important, as well as you know, like in the past, I think Chief People's Officers had to collaborate and learn how to collaborate with CFOs a lot, because in the end, whenever you're managing a workforce, you're managing a cost center as it's often perceived, and therefore the CPOs tend to answer as well and collaborate a lot with CFOs. But now this relationship with AI on the chief people's officers is also changing so much, because they need to start collaborating and understanding the terrain of the CTOs. So it's not just, I don't even think that the roles are merging. I think we also need to come back into like collaboration. How does each stakeholder collaborate with each other, and how do they use resources, capabilities, capacity within the teams, and make sure that HR and people's teams gain the most from the IT support, and how can maybe IT and technology become also much more human centric. I think there's like so much beauty in collaborating on that level. And I think my reflection here is, especially when talking redefining roles and responsibilities in the workplace, both of you shared a lot about, that AI is helping us do a lot of administrative tasks. And in the past, the administrative tasks in the beginning were always sort of outsourced or handed down to junior talent, which, especially in consulting, if you think about it, like the interns, etc., in consulting industry, they tend to do the legwork, the more operational tasks initially to learn the craft of the job. And I think that is going to be more and more influenced, because I think I also saw that before we've hosted an event, because I've launched a few polls for my community, that more and more like young people who are today looking for a job, looking for the first internship, are struggling to land it, because so much is being currently outsourced to AI, and so much of the administrative work that in the end also helps you learn the functional craft is being simply outsourced to AI. So I think the young talent that's coming into the workforce today is presented with a new challenge of how do we reinvent ourselves and make ourselves and our skills and our capabilities attractive, while we do still need to improve on our functional skills. So I think it's not just like human AI teams, they're not just redefining the roles today, they're redefining of where talent will be moving in the future, and what skills will be more and more relevant when looking for the next opportunity, looking for a job. So this is also something that I would, before we jump to the next question, do you have any thoughts on that, on the AI's impact on not just redefining the roles today, but redefining how people will be looking for jobs and will be, going after that? So maybe Missy, what are your thoughts on that?
I can say right now we're already seeing a change in how people are looking for jobs, and even internally as a people team, our talent acquisition managers are thinking about, the process of managing that. So people want to have more, obviously people are using AI when they're applying for jobs as well. That's very evident. And the companies that kind of put in these AI policies or allow you to use AI, um, they're more transparent with it. I think helps you feel a little bit more relaxed about when you're applying somewhere, because we all know everyone's using it. Um, and then, sorry, I have a couple trains of thoughts around this. And then there's this like concept of, which I don't have an opinion about yet, I haven't formed it, but people using AI to replace the talent acquisition role and then doing screening this way. I've seen benefits where people are saying, they've matched better candidates with the role, they've had an increase in, bringing people into the organization that way. I've also seen people don't like being interviewed by the AI avatar. There's a lot that goes into it. I don't have a strong opinion on this part yet, but I'd be interested to hear Tony's perspective on it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've been testing a few of these sorts of tools, and I also have a mixed opinion. I think there's so much about what makes a company culture is about the interactions between people, that when your first introduction to a company is not with a person, but with some sort of tool or avatar or whatever, I think you already send a very strong signal that somehow this organization is going to put efficiency maybe above the human piece. So I'm not fully against it per se, but I think there are implications for sure. I think on the broader question you just posed, Milda, about how people find roles as well and how people find opportunities. I do think at the moment what we're doing is we're putting AI into the old workflow. So the old workflow is vacancy is advertised, candidates apply, there is a selection process, and we get there. My sense is that in itself is the thing that needs reworking. So what kind of roles do we need in the organization, but then how we find people could well be different. I mean, I can see a world where we move into a more kind of apprenticeship to internship type of world, because you don't need junior roles anymore per se to do those kind of basic jobs. So how do we bring people in? What craft are we teaching them? If you want to be a marketeer, or if you want to be in a people team, or you want to be in finance, you don't come in anymore and learn bookkeeping, because you don't need bookkeeping. You will never need bookkeeping as a skill. It's like, pre-calculators, like we do not need to teach children anymore how to calculate cosines and algebra. That's what we use calculators for. So I think maybe there is something fundamentally different in what it is we need to hire for and how we hire. I also don't think the answer's clear yet, but I think there is something quite different about the future of recruitment than it is today. And I don't just think it's on automating the workflow that we have in place now.
Agreed.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for this. Also, I see it in a very similar way. I think also somehow the soft skills, let's call it like that, or blend of skills will become even more important when you position yourself towards employer, and the functional skills can always be sort of learned on the job. So I'm wondering how organizations will design for that in the future. And I would like to move to the next question. And before we move to the next question, I'm going to ask a poll question that Elisa is going to launch. So which job category do you believe is being transformed most rapidly by AI? So yeah, entry-level jobs, repetitive tasks, mid-level analytical and operational roles. I think that one is also very interested. Analysis. I personally do a lot of analysis with my dear friend ChatGPT and Perplexity. Highly specialized expert roles. I see no one's touching that one yet, and we don't currently integrate AI into our workflows, which can also be an answer. Before we jump in, maybe also Tony, you'd like to share your just thought. What do you think? Which job category do you believe is being transformed most rapidly by AI from these four?
Yeah, I think probably the first and the last. So depending on the type of specialism and expertise that we're talking about. So for example, if you think about I don't know, graphic design. So that is a role that you could class as like highly specialized, highly expert, maybe, technical graphic design. I think those sorts of roles can be augmented by AI. And then at the flip side, it's the very, very generalist ones. So indeed, those very early career stage ones, the admin heavy roles, I think those are probably also most impacted. But in terms of the volume of roles, I presume, because I don't know for sure, but I would agree with what Missy was saying. That's probably the most obvious group who are struggling, I think, to find roles. And at the same time, I'm seeing a reduction in the number of roles advertised in that particular group.
Okay, Missy, what about your thoughts
Yeah.
here? Anything?
I would agree with Tony. I think I don't have much to defer off of what she's already said, but I think a lot of those admin-y type roles and junior based roles, as we've been discussing, are the ones that are getting hit right now the most. And then as more advanced models come out of AI, I definitely think the deep expertise could be at risk at some point. So it just depends on how fast we move and how we respond to that.
Agreed. So I'm going to share results actually. So many voted that entry level or repetitive task roles being transformed most rapidly by AI. And I've also second that. But I also still today see so much great entry-level talent that's bringing much more skills to the table. Somehow I also find that it creates an opportunity. So even though the transformation can affect a group of individuals and a group of workforce, I also feel it creates an opportunity to reinvent themselves. So with that, I'm moving into the next question, which is, what jobs will be disrupted by AI and what does it mean for the future of work? And let's really dive maybe into specific jobs and examples and maybe skills that you can share. And, I have a bit of a twisted question at the end for both of you. So Missy, starting with yourself.
Well, I guess for me, there's no single truth. I mean, obviously, this is very industry specific, role specific, and it's deeply skills based. Like if you're working in manufacturing, or if you're in tech, or if you're a nurse, like obviously those skills are going to change rapidly. And I feel like it's not just like a big wave of displacement. We're really seeing a lot of micro tremors of transformation as these roles, are moving over real time as the AI becomes more advanced or smarter. And we've already discussed this, but those narrow kind of repetitive roles for me are the most under pressure, and that tends to be the junior level side of thing, the entry level jobs. We also have the rise in the integration roles, which we've spoken about too. The people who are really bridging technology and context, like AI product owners, workflow designers. I was reading an article a couple days ago that mentioned companies are now hiring executive chief AI officers into their C-suite team, which is a new C-suite role, which is really interesting. And I was thinking as I was reading this article, like, how did they get into that job knowing that AI is still changing? Like, how can you be an expert already at that, knowing that it's moving so fast? So that's why I really kind of focus on the T-shaped skills, because for me, the durability of your career is really about investing in that and deepening. So you deepen your core speciality, and then you broaden a lot of your AI fluency, the data literacy, change management, which Tony is talking about a lot, and then kind of periodically stretching into different areas of the business diagonally into those adjacent skills that you need, because then you're able to become like a person that can put a lot of moving parts together in the organization, and you can be very cross-functional. So you bridge those gaps. You can give a very rapid type of functional literacy, especially outside of your core expertise. And then, having that literacy will help you collaborate better. You ask sharper questions, you understand, where people are coming from, going back to the human skills of empathy, and you can, connect those dots that people are missing.
100%. Tony, anything that you'd like to add here?
Yeah, a couple of things. I really love the thought of the T skills. I can only echo how important that is going to be and is. And it also reminds me a bit. There was a moment in time, maybe a decade ago now, as we were kind of transforming out of a pre-digital world. So in the world before we really used the internet, when email was just coming into force, and there was there was this huge swathe of like, my God, all this manual work is now disappearing, the typewriters and all of that. And I know I sound like I'm really harking back to an ancient past, but it was within my career lifetime. And one of the things I saw there is exactly that. It's the bridge into understanding your role differently. So at that time, the role of the kind of executive assistant, or secretary as it was then, totally transformed. The roles, though, still exist today, in one shape or another, but they absolutely transformed. And one of the ways in which they did transform is that breadth of skills. So it went from only typing up, your boss's letters and contracts and all the rest of it, to suddenly it then became into diary management, which then broadened into kind of preparation of presentations. And the broader people's skills got, the more those roles remained valuable and critical, but just in completely new ways. And I think that for me is going to be a similar type of shift now. So the way Missy talks about T type of skills and stretching into the diagonals. I love the language you use there, because I think that is the kind of transformation that we're going in. And coming back on to my favorite topic always of change management, and how important it is to bring people with you on that journey, to get people excited for the opportunity that gives them, the new learnings, the new mindset, to be able to stretch into, okay, I need to always think about the workflow, the legal, I need to always think about whatever GDPR. It gives people the chance to broaden themselves and constantly reinvent their own skill set. So I think if we really position the why people need to do this, why they need to think differently, but also importantly, the what's in it for me. This isn't just about me keeping a job, and I don't have to do it from a place of fear. This is about an opportunity for me to grow as a human, to unlock more potential, to unlock more learning. I think that is really, I think that's, yeah, I think that's the most exciting part of all of this. And I just see Nikki has asked Missy to talk a bit more about the T. So I'll hand back to Missy to talk about the depth versus the breadth. Because if anyone hasn't heard that phrase before, I agree, it's a great one.
Yeah, for sure. So I think a good example that I can give you, I can in my own specific role, I started off learning just like very basic learning and development. And just by the way, I did not go to college to study HR or any of this. In university, I studied linguistics and translation. So I've done like a huge career change actually. And so I went very deep into learning and talent development on my side, and like just very basic learning programs, and then I started expanding kind of my depth of knowledge and expertise within that realm. And then it wasn't until later in my career where I started really developing more skills and more experience and knowledge in other parts of HR, like, compensation and benefits, in HRBP tasks, in people ops and payroll. These are all very different skill sets that you need to have within a people team. And then even taking that one step further, which is like, how do I understand the employee experience journey and who are all the players involved? Okay, so for example, let's take IT. One of the main big programs that I run at Pigment is onboarding. And so there's a multitude of yeah, of teams and people involved in getting someone onboarded in a company. So I need to understand the pain points from IT. When do they need to ship that, that equipment out? What do they need for security and compliance? How can I help bridge that gap? Like, do I understand that perspective and understand what goes into doing that job? Same for finance. Same for our CEO, our office of the CEO, understanding administratively what the founders are thinking and organizational structure. So you start to really reach your fingers into all of these areas and develop, more of that skill set by asking questions, gaining that experience, and knowing the knowledge of not just, what those teams are doing, but also within your company, how that's run and what are the expectations there. So that's kind of how I think about it in my own reflection. And I think each one of us here could probably do that with their careers.
100%. And maybe just in the wild question, I actually have two wild ones before I give it to the crowd to ask their questions. So if you would have to say like today, these are the three skills that people should take a look at and start nourishing a little bit and investing in building, what would be your top three skills that everyone, or almost like functional agnostic, what skills should people take a look at? Missy, starting with you as you're unmuted.
Ooh, this is definitely a hot seat question. I think obviously I'm gonna go with AI literacy because we're talking about AI. So the first one, and I'm not talking about coding. I'm talking specifically about like knowing and understanding like what AI is good at, like what AI tools that you should use for what purpose, because not every AI tool is good at doing, summarizing information, data analysis, generation of images, things like that. You also have to know where it fails, like where to hallucinate, when to stop, when to put in like those blockers there. Prompting, obviously, we need to be really good at structuring prompts. And for me, AI is about, AI is a tool that is just regurgitating information. So the way that you control it is being the puppeteer. So your prompt And the better the prompt you have, the better that you can have it predict the outcome that you want. And review also, ask it questions back, program it to ask questions to you, to challenge you, and ask for sources. And then of course understanding, which I've the chat is amazing, by the way. It's like popping off. I can't keep up with everything. There's a lot of really good questions here about like ethics and, you know, the bias, the explainability, the privacy of this. So I think that that's super important. And then I think critical thinking, judgment, obviously, is another one. You know, you need to be able to make trade-offs with imperfect information. AI is not able to, you know, have the context or the nuance. Like if you ask it a basic question, you know, what's the capital of France? It's going to say Paris, not because it knows it, but because that's all what all the information is saying. So that's what it's going to give back to you. So you have to be able to really think about things in a challenging way and spot the contradictions, the consequences, things like that. Um, you know, a lot of those human skills, creativity as well, you know, it can only be as creative as what we've put into it. So we need to maintain that. And as I said, you know, coming back to T-shaped skills, like broadening the literacy that you have in all of the adjacent fields around your role. So in AI, in data, in change management is a big one, communication. And you have to be comfortable at shifting those roles and those tasks depending on what you have to do, and just learning how to design that in the flow of your work.
Super. Thank you so much for sharing, Missy. Tony, anything that you'd like to add or challenge here?
No, it's certainly not challenge, and I think I know you want to do a Q&A with the audience, so I won't take any more time. But I would probably double click on critical thinking. I think that's going to be absolutely paramount that we really, really learn how to challenge what our tools create, produce, and say. Integration skills so that we can really integrate the technology and the human. And then the one that I haven't mentioned yet, but I'm very passionate about, is in my view, the paramount importance of how we train our AI models on ethics and values. I think if we do not do that, we really are on a slippery slope for any organizational culture. So for me, ethical guardianship, and that's not just on the people team. I think everybody should always have a hat on of how do I ensure that this tool continuously learns what it means to have the values that we want of either as an organization or as a human species, quite frankly.
Thank you. Thank you for this one. And I also agree. And we just touched the topic of ethics for a moment. But what I wanted to offer is if any of you would like to, and we're going to take one question. So if you raise your hand, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions directly to the speakers. Because I really want to encourage us for like really engage, and that you also the audience feels that you're speaking directly to the panelists. So if anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand now, and we're going to invite you to unmute and ask your question. If not, feel free to ask it in chat. So I'm just looking at the questions here. Some people just needed to hop off. Don't see anyone raising their hand just now. I think was also a little bit of a surprise for many. I run my webinars a little bit differently. I like to make them as interactive as possible. But maybe then let's continue a little bit on the topic of ethics now, because we have a few moments and you've touched on this, Tony. So everyone should be responsible to wear this ethical hat. But who is leading this behavior? Who is instilling this behavior in the organization? And who should people rely to? Because ethics is such a subjective thing. So how do you set the standard in the organization here? And then I see that also Angela will have a question as well. So maybe Tony, you answer this one, and then Angela can also ask her question then quickly.
Sure, I'll go very quickly. I think the answer is it needs to be a partnership, but all at executive level. So if you have a chief AI officer, and I agree it's an exciting role that must be in the emergence, maybe that is one. I think people team, the chief people officer for sure plays a huge role, and I would say arguably maybe on legal as well. But in the absence of anybody else, it should be the CEO of the business. I mean, again, fundamentally, it's like who owns the values of your company? The answer is kind of everybody. But if there is nobody else taking the lead, then certainly I would take the lead as the CPO of the organization.
Super, thank you so much. And Angela, I'm asking you to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, can you hear me? Just to make sure.
Yes, we can.
All right, so I wanted to ask a question based on my experience. So I do some job coaching for people that are transitioning from, let's say, like non-tech roles to tech roles or even junior talent. And you are right that a lot of them are struggling to find roles at the moment. So I'm wondering what the solution is in this case, because we still have a lot of like, the younger generation, people that are learning, growing. Do we feel that maybe the education system is going to change as well then to adapt to the current market? Or for instance, the skills that you mentioned to nourish, do those also apply to junior talent as well? So like, the critical thinking, creativity, and prompting and AI literacy. So just want to know your thoughts on what should people in these positions do, or what tips you would have for them? And the education system as well. Is it something that needs to be changed to adapt to the new age?
Thank you. Maybe Missy, we can start with you. Thank you, Angela, for the question once more.
Really good question, Angela. Thanks for asking that. I hear two questions actually. The first question is like, what can people do that don't have a tech-ish background that are kind of like transitioning and they're wanting to get into that? And the second question is more on like, how do we approach and tackle AI in education today, which is like a whole other topic I think that we could go down. So I'm gonna tackle the first one, just because I think it's a super interesting one in terms of what we're talking about today. But for me, it's like about building that baseline of digital fluency. I actually have a friend who has recently gone through this, and he managed a bar for 20 years and then wanted to pivot into marketing, even though he went to business school. And so some of my advice to him was like, we need to get you comfortable with using digital tools, first of all. So you need to start building like a little bit of fluency around the basics. So like, how is software built? Like, what are the basic tech skills that you need to understand when it comes to organizations? Like, how about trying some free tools so that you can get familiar with things like even just like Notion, Figma, GitHub, starting off with ChatGPT, Claude. There's a lot of free tools that you can sign up for, and just starting to play with them and to do them. I'm a learner by a doer, so I definitely think, especially with people that don't have like that baseline, they need to see, they need to touch. It needs to be very like tactical. And then translating your experience into like a tech language. So diving into those areas where, maybe you're an event manager, you need to pivot that into being a complex project manager, and then, understanding what tools can help you support doing that job better. Or, if you trained on the job, or if you did something that, okay, so you've led some, scalable learning experiences, and what are the skills that you use there. So I think you need to take some time to deep dive into each case, obviously. I can't just give like a blanket answer there, but definitely focusing on how you're bridging like that human skill set you have with what we're looking for in today's world with, with digital literacy and fluency and tech environments.
Thank you so much for sharing, Missy, and I hope that answers your question, Angela. I'm actually, because we're a little bit out of time, because the topic was just so, I think non-exhaustive in the end. I think there's so many questions still there that we could answer. I wanted to maybe launch the next poll that will focus on what should our next webinar topic be. So for those who are still there, feel free to vote of what you would like to hear more about in the future, and hopefully we can invite and have Missy and Tony again in a very near future. So while you're voting, I wanted to share a few key takeaways, but I'll also give a quick moment, sort of, if you would need to describe in one word or like a one sentence, what was something that you took away with you from this webinar. And maybe to start with inviting Tony, what was one thing that you took away from this webinar today? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. There was a huge amount that I took away from everything here, but I think maybe the biggest thing is around this retraining of uh, our skill set. So really thinking about I'm going to use Missy's language again, the diagonals and the T-shape. But more than anything, I think that's going to be the most important thing, that we really experiment with AI tools, and that we learn how to develop our critical thinking so that we can leverage them in the best way. And I just put in the chat, by the way, a little tool, prof.ai. I'm not affiliated, but it's a really fantastic free platform to help anybody get more AI literate. So I would suggest, if any of the audience are feeling that they give it a go.
I love how actionable you are, Tony. Missy, how about yourself? What's like that one takeaway that you take away and you would want for others to take away from today's webinar?
Oh, one key takeaway. It's hard. I think just don't be afraid of AI. It's an amplifier. So think about how you can use it in your roles at work and redesign part of your role, and take the initiative on your side, I think, because showing that you're interested in something and that you want to, explore it shows your ability to transform and to change with how things are changing. And just being, just keeping in mind that it's there to help you. It can give you a competitive edge. It can help you unlock a lot of things like a lot faster than you normally would. And I think those are all really important things that you should take with you, knowing how things are moving so fast. And with everything that we've spoken about, it's hard to be prepared when things are changing so fast, but keeping that mentality and curiosity is very important.
I absolutely agree. And maybe to second and to add, I also don't think that artificial intelligence is sort of versus human intelligence. So I think none of us should be scared. And I think all of us should embrace, like Tony also mentioned, over the last 20 years, technology has changed so much and there was so much fear mongering in the past. So what I also wanted to share a little bit, no matter where you are in your like job search journey or in your organizational redesign journey, don't forget that human intelligence and human skills will always matter. So critical thinking, as you know, both Missy and Tony mentioned, networking, for example, for me as a marketeer, I'm noticing how networking is becoming even more and more important in comparison to all of these operational analytical tasks. So I just want to maybe wish everyone to, invest in yourself and invest in your power, skills, and superpowers, because I think that's what will really set you apart. And then having that said, I would also like to start wrapping up the webinar and share a little bit of food for thought. So you can access our research recently done on the HR strategy guide for AI era and the evolution of skills 2030 by scanning one of these codes. Everyone who has joined or who has signed up is also going to receive this as an email follow-up. And of course, we will link Tony's and Missy's LinkedIn profiles. So if you have any additional questions, you can always feel free to ping them. I believe both of them are very open to connect with you on LinkedIn and support on any questions that you might have. And if you would like to see them again on the Lapaya webinar, feel free to also ping me. I would be really excited to host both Missy and Tony again on any different topic. So let's stay in touch, and you can stay looped in the loop through LinkedIn or connecting through all of us individually. And thank you to the panelists for joining and for sharing. And thank you to everyone who stayed with us throughout the webinar. Super open to your feedback and really open to see where and how we as HR leaders can define the future of work together. So thank you very much to all of you. And wishing everyone a wonderful day today.
Thank you for having us, Milda. It was great.
Thank you so much. Great job, Milda.
Always, always, always. Bye, everyone.